Okay, good. So we are doing Daf Yomi for the month, which is sponsored by Mr. and Mrs. Moshe and Susie Feder, Lili Nishmas, Mrs. Feder's father, Simcha Aryeh ben Yosef Tzvi, whose yahrzeit was on the 17th of Iyar. We are going to start, we're going to move back a little bit from the two dots because we're going to discuss these cases. We're going to start from Tanu Rabbanan on Yud Tes Amud Aleph 19a, which we're going to start from 6 lines from the bottom. Right, because we'll go through these cases. I don't know why I just couldn't read the words. I think I was skipping words as I was going at the end of last night. But Tanu Rabbanan rabbis learned Shnei Shvilin, 2 paths. Okay, Echad Tamei v'Echad Tohar. Under one of the paths, there's a dead body. Okay, so now if you travel over that path, you become Tamei. Travel over the other path, and you're fine. V'halach barishon v'lo nichnas. He goes through the first path, and he does not go into the Beis HaMikdash after that. Okay? Basheni, then he goes back and he walks through the second path. V'nichnas. Now he goes into the Beis HaMikdash. So he's definitely gone over the Tamei part because he went through the first path, then he went through the second path. He doesn't know at what point he did it, but at some point he definitely went over the Tamei. He is now chayiv. He's in violation of being Tamei in the Beis HaMikdash. Now, next circumstance. Halach barishon v'nichnas. He goes through the first path, goes into the Beis HaMikdash right after the first path. Now, because, right? It's been on his mind. I know it's been on his mind all day. Been on the first path, okay? He goes into the Beis HaMikdash after he goes through the first path. And he does not know whether he's Tamei or not. Well, first of all, he didn't think about whether he was Tamei or not in either of the cases. But even if he would have known that there was tumah on one of the paths, he couldn't possibly know if he's Tamei right now because he doesn't know where the body is. Then, what does he do? After he comes out of the Beis HaMikdash, he's a v'shina v'tavel. He gets sprinkled with the ashes from the paraduma. He waits day 3, he does it again on day 7, and he goes to the mikvah, and now he's tahor. Beautiful. V'achar kach, now after he's tahor, halach basheni. He goes, and this time he goes to the Beis HaMikdash, takes the second path. V'nichnas, and he goes into the Beis HaMikdash again. Chayiv. He's going to be liable because either the tumah was at the first path, in which case he violated it the first time he went through, or the tumah was under the second path, which means that he violated it the second time he went through. But Rabbi Shimon poter, Rabbi Shimon says, nope, not so. Rabbi Shimon says that you are not in violation from the second case, because in the second case, as we will see momentarily, even if at any point he was completely aware of what he was doing, there was no information that would have guaranteed at any point that he was Tamei. In the first case, he went through the first path and went through the second path. If he became aware of everything that happened, then he's got all the information there in his head to go, oh, there's tumah and one of the paths. I went through the first path, I went through the second path. I'm definitely Tamei. He knows that he's definitely Tamei. In the second case, even if you were to know everything that happened, there's no way for him to know that he's Tamei. Because if he knew there's tumah under one of the paths, he went through the first one, purified himself, went through the second one, purified himself. He does not know at what point he did that affair. Now it's true, he knows that he was Tamei and he was in the Beis HaMikdash, but he does not know at any one point that he was for sure in violation. He was a suffix violation the first time, and he was a suffix violation the second time. There's no point at which he was in the Beis HaMikdash knowing 100%, could have known 100%, I am Tamei right now.
But usually, the rice, we go suffix the rice l'chumra. We usually are more chumra.
Yeah, we're not saying he's allowed to do this. We're saying after the fact now, can he bring a korban? And we have a suffix d'oraisa l'chumra by the korban. Why? Because you're not allowed to bring a non-required korban. Right? It's a los as a prohibition to bring non-sacrificial products into the Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, you're not going to bring a korban. Right? That's going to be that's the suffix d'oraisa l'chumra, to not bring the korban. Right?
It might be more relevant today than one might think, because the mafia in like Montreal and a lot of places bury bodies in concrete when they lay the foundations of buildings.
Okay, there you go. Common practice amongst mafia members, I'm told. Yes, and so therefore you might wind up in jail, but only if you wind up going to the Beis HaMikdash afterwards or eating kudshim. If you're Kohen, it's also an issue. So now, okay. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda poter bekulon. Now Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda says, actually in both of the cases, and we're going to discuss why, both of the cases you are not liable, right? Mishum Rabbi Shimon, because of what Rabbi Shimon has to say. And we're going to see what's going on there. Okay, let's talk about them. Bechulon va'afilu b'kamaisa. This statement that we just made, Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda is exempt. He means even the first case where he went through path 1 and then path 2 and then went into Beis Hamikdash, which means that he definitely was tamei. And if he was aware of the fact that he went through path 1, path 2, he would definitely know at the time he was in the Beis Hamikdash that he was tamei. He's still going to be off the hook. Miman of shach, tamehu. For sure, either way you look at it, he's tamei. So Amar Rava, Rava says, Hachva mayaskina. What's going on here? Kigon sheholach barishon. What happens is we have to adjust the case a little bit. It's not like we said. At the time, sheholach barishon ubeshan sheholach basheni shachach sheholach barishon. What happened is he went through the first path, and then he forgot that he went through the first path and went through the second path. Okay, dahavyole miktsas yediyah. So therefore, what he's got is there's never a moment at which he's completely aware of the fact that he did become tamei, right? It is different in that potentially there's knowledge out there that would prove that he was tamei, but there was never a moment in time where he could possibly know that he was tamei. In other words, but what we thought the case was, he went through path 1 and then went through path 2. He knows he's tamei, then he forgot and then went into the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, that's just a standard case of being tamei. Why is that any different? The answer is because here he went through path 1, doesn't remember going through path 1, then went through path 2. So there was never a moment at which he knew. Ubeha kamiflagi. That's where the argument is. Tanakana Pasavar, the first opinion holds, Amrinan mixas yediyah kekol yediyah. He says that knowing part of the information is equivalent to knowing all of the information. Okay, so therefore, we are going to consider that to be as though you knew at the time you went through path 1 that you went through path 1. Then you knew at the time you went through path 2 that you went through path 2. Therefore, we can combine that information together in order to, that's considered full knowledge. Rabbi Shimon savar lo amrina mixas yediyah kakol yediyah. Rabbi Shimon says no. If you never had a moment at which you were aware of the fact that you went through path 1 and path 2, that's only partial awareness. That does not count. There's never an awareness, and therefore you have not satisfied the requirement that we know that you need, which is to be aware of your tumah before you go into the Beis Hamikdash in order to be liable for this korban.
What is this guy's motivation for going into the Beis Hamikdash?
Let's say he wants to bring a korban.
Okay. Would it change the situation depending on how important it is for him to be in the Beis Hamikdash? Like if he was the Kohen Gadol on his way to the Beis Hamikdash and he had to be there for services.
Right, so if a Kohen Gadol was tamei, right, he couldn't go in either.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't think it makes much difference. It's going to be prohibited from going as long as he's tamei.
Okay.
Okay, halach barishon v'nichnas. Okay, now let's talk about the next case. Halach barishon v'nichnas, right? He goes through path 1, and then he goes into the Beis Hamikdash. He's a v'shina v'tovel. And then the case was he got sprinkled, he purified himself, went through the process on day 3, then does it again on day 7, dunks in the mikvah, and he's completely toher now. Chazar v'holach b'sheni, now he goes back to the Beis Hamikdash, then he takes path number 2. V'nichnas, he goes in. He's chayev. V'Rabbi Shimon poter, Rabbi Shimon says you're poter in that case. V'amai chayev. Why should you be liable? Safek yediyahu. He only has an awareness of a safek. He doesn't know he was tamei at any point. When he would have been aware of the fact that he was tamei, after if he was aware he walked through the first path, all his awareness would be is, maybe I'm tamei. Then if he was aware when he walked through the second path, maybe I'm tamei. There's never an awareness of tumah there. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Kan asu safek yediyah ki yediyah. This is a circumstance where they said that being partial aware, being in a doubtful awareness, is like you are completely aware. That is considered the same thing. Okay, so now Reish Lakish says money. He says no. I'll tell you what it is, even though that is the argument whether you're going to consider that doubtful awareness to be full awareness. This is not his view. Reish Lakish says money. Who is this? This is Rabbi Yishmael. This represents Rabbi Yishmael's perspective. Remember from the beginning that in order to be obligated for this korban olav yored, we needed awareness. Right. Then you forgot and you became aware again. Well, not Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael said you don't need awareness at the beginning. So therefore, the opinion that's saying that when you went through path 1 and then you became pure, then you went through path 2, you know why you're still liable for sacrifice? Because we don't care, right? You might not have known ever. It doesn't make any difference. You're still going to be liable for a sacrifice because that's Rabbi Yishmael's perspective. That's how Reish Lakish looks at it.
Who's this? Rish Lakish, right?
That's Reish Lakish. That's Reish Lakish.
He kind of seems to be kind of a rude and abrupt or machotav in this situation.
I'm not sure that he is. I don't see that. I think that he's just explaining this Rabbi Yishmael's perspective.
Is he liable for the act of knowing like would someone be liable for the act of knowing they're tamei in the Beis Hamikdash or for being tamei in the Beis Hamikdash?
Being tamei,
Okay.
right? You have to know in order to bring the korban, right? Because if you don't know, you can't do anything about it.
So the question is,
You have to know, forget, and then know again, according to Rabbi Akiva. According to Rabbi Yishmael, that first knowing is unnecessary. You could not be aware that you're tamei, go into the Beis Hamikdash, and then come out and then become aware that you were tamei and still be chayav the korban. And that's what he says the argument is about. Again, Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with that. Rabbi Yochanan says it's just a matter of whether you hold this partial awareness, this doubtful awareness is considered sufficient to bring a korban or not. And that's where the argument is. For Rami de Rabbi Yochanan, the Rabbi Yochanan, for Rami Reish Lakish, and Reish Lakish. The only issue now is that you're going to have a contradiction between Rabbi Yochanan and his own point of view and Reish Lakish and his own point of view. The Tanya Guna Raisa. Achel Safek Chaylev, let's say somebody eats meat that is doubtful whether it's non-kosher meat. It's doubtful, a sacrificial.
How do you know if he has split hooves and through the cut?
It's already said, it's a piece of steak, right? That's what you got in front of you. You don't have the whole animal in front of you. You got a
pork chop, for example.
This is going to be chaylev. It's a piece of forbidden fats, right? It's beef, right? Piece of forbidden fats, right? So you don't know. The noda, then he becomes aware. Safek chaylev, the noda, then he eats another safek chaylev and he becomes aware. So now, when you do a avera and you're not sure whether what you did is an avera or not, the korban that you're supposed to bring is an asham tolui. That's a suspended sentence guilt offering, right? And that basically means that you do this sacrifice, and it protects you from punishment until you become 100% aware of the fact that you did the avera. When you become 100% aware of the fact that you did the avera, then you have to bring a chatas, okay? But in the meantime, you bring a korban asham totally. Okay. So now, Rabbi says in this circumstance, Kishem shemevi chatos al kol echad ve'echad, just like Rabbi says, just like if you were in a circumstance where you ate chaylev and you knew it, and you became aware of it, then you ate chaylev again and you became aware of it, each time not knowing when you ate it, but you became aware of it, you'd have to bring two different korbanos. So maybe, then, kach mevi asham totally al kol echad ve'echad. So to hear that he has two separate doubtful situations, he became aware of the fact that he ate something that was doubtfully chaylev, and then he ate another piece that was doubtfully chaylev. He has to bring two korbanos. He has to bring two separate korban asham tolis.
What's chaylev?
Chaylev is forbidden fats, right? Parts of the animal, fats of certain parts of the animals around the kidneys and the stomach are prohibited to be eaten even on a kosher animal. They're not kosher.
Who is shechted properly?
Even when it's shechted properly and all that, yes.
So how would I know?
Well, you wouldn't find it in the butcher. You're not going to find that in the kosher. And how would you know? That's the question. You wouldn't, right? If you found a piece of meat on the kitchen table, right, you would have no way of knowing whether that was a kosher piece of meat or not.
Okay.
Right?
Well,
and that's the point, that there would be no way to know. You'd have to, and then you become aware. So you don't, somebody says, oh, I'm not sure whether that was kosher or that wasn't kosher. So then you have to bring an asham totally. Right, you bring this asham tolui, this guilt offering that protects you from punishment until you become aware of whether you did it or not. Asham tolui is a guilt offering. Yeah.
Is this?
Asham, that's how I remember it.
Yep.
Always. Shame. That's
shame.
the word actually came.
Oh, that's very good, Brian.
Is this b'diavad because you should always not eat the meat, and if
this is not a circumstance where he came along and said, "Oh, well, I can eat this, and I'll just bring a korban." Right? That's mazid. Right? If you're mazid, if you do it on purpose, then you don't bring a korban. Right?
But he wasn't aware of this effect before he ate them.
Correct.
It was only after.
Only afterwards. That's correct.
If you're doing on purpose, then you get punished.
Then you're going to get punished, and you're not going to bring a korban. Okay. Now, yeah.
That'd be makos.
I'm having a problem with the guy walked down the first path.
Yeah.
And then, like, are we talking about there's a dead body on the path?
Buried underneath.
Oh,
someone
so
buried.
You don't have to touch the dead body.
No, you have to walk over a grave. Your tummy.
So and then he goes down the other path because he forgets he walked down the first one. How much period of time was there between?
Oh, I have no idea.
that he would forget that he just.
How much time does it take to forget?
What if you just forgot which
Well, for
path you
me,
took?
quickly, but for
Right.
most people,
Well, maybe a lot of
You
people
could
are
just-
like you.
You could also just forget which path you took and take the
God
wrong path.
forbid.
Yeah, just the other path.
Right?
Well,
The answer is he forgot. right?
okay,
Mhm.
okay,
How
Happens.
many times do we do things by rote without even
Correct.
thinking?
okay.
Yeah, he was talking to his friend the whole
Drive
time. I don't know
somewhere,
which way did I
road
go this
took?
I don't know.
You have thousands of cars. You don't remember where you parked.
He was trying to remember which path he had buried the body in.
Then, well, he might not even been the one who buried it, right? Okay, now, Rabbi Shimon Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Amru, Rabbi Shimon Yehuda, and Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon say, they say Mishum Rabbi Shimon, and then Rabbi Shimon, Eino Mevi Ela Asham Toli Echad. No, you only bring one. Why? Because the only time that you divide the two Averos up is when you become fully aware of the fact that you did it. By definition, you're not aware of an Avera that you did. You're only thinking you might have done an Avera. Might have done is not an awareness of an Avera. Therefore, you basically did one Avera twice without knowing for sure that you did it. Therefore, one korban is
I
sufficient.
think you could be full of adrenaline to remember which one you did.
Well, I don't know. That's a good question. I think adrenaline may help you forget, but I'm not sure how. Shenemar, Shenemar, as it says, Al Shigagaso Asher Shagag, right? On the Shogeg Avera that he forgot about. HaTorah Ribsa Shigagos Harbe, the Asham Toli Echad. The Torah tells us that if you do act negligently and doubtfully several times, you still only bring one Asham Toli. And Asham Toli suffices and takes care of all of your doubtful sinful situations. As long as you don't know and become aware of the fact that you actually did it, you can bring one offering to take care of all of your doubts.
What does that mean? Like he let's say he knows it's treif, but he didn't.
No, he didn't know. That's the whole point. He knows that he ate a piece of meat that he shouldn't have because he wasn't sure if it was kosher or not.
So it's a suffix.
He knows he ate a suffix.
And then, but so you're able to bring the korban asham when it's a suffix.
That's right.
You're not sure you did an avera, but you still bring an asham.
That's right. And now he finds out that he did it again.
And so now he's right.
Now he still brings one korban for the whole thing.
Is there a statute of limitations to the Averos? Like if he did it 20 years ago and then did it again and it was like, oh, I did this 20 years ago.
Generally
I forgot to
speaking,
bring
we
in
don't
korban.
want to delay bringing this sacrifice
Yeah, but like let's
for
say,
our own benefit, right? Because you're subject to punishment as long as you have not brought this sacrifice. If you don't want to delay, theoretically, I could delay, and maybe you're right. According to this opinion, maybe I can wait several years and have all of my doubtful averos taken care of in one avera. But I run the risk of getting punished for an avera that I could have prevented that punishment by bringing that sacrifice earlier
by
on.
the base
It's a better
dean or by
move.
Hashem?
That's right.
Better move.
Better move. Bring the
None of
sacrifice.
this pertains to us because
We don't have sacrifice. Correct. Now, it does pertain to us because since we don't have a Beis Hamikdash,
Right.
if you owe one of these sacrifices, you read the section, the little paragraph in your siddur about that sacrifice, and it's as though you brought the sacrifice. So therefore, it is.
Slichot? Or
No,
what was it?
right? You have your siddur right here, right? So right at the beginning,
Oh, it's just the
Korbanos.
section of Korban.
and the korbanos. That's right. So all of the sacrifices are listed, and you just read that one paragraph. This is the one that you read, right? This is the Shamit Tzibor, the Ola, the Toda, right? Each one that you need. This is your Shlomim. You're not going to have an Asham Toli in here, but you could find the Psukim. You're not going to find the Asham Toli in here, but you're going to bring.
Because that
right?
one seems more useful.
Yeah, so that's right. So you right. So you find those chorus. You read that sacrifice section in the Torah, and that takes care of you. It's probably better
A
off.
lot easier.
It's free.
Yeah.
I was just telling Jeff, I never read that part.
No.
He said, I think it's time you should start. I should have started 50 years ago.
Now, let's see. Okay, the Amar Reish Lakish. Okay, Reish Lakish says about this. Kan Shana Rebbe, that Rebbe is basically teaching here that Yedios Sfekos Mischalkos Lechatos. Rebbe is teaching us that the awareness of the doubt actually separates not only for the Korban Asham, the guilt offering that he has to bring, but even for the Korban Chatos that he might eventually bring as well. Here's what happens, right? Person brings, I'm sorry I'm going slow, but I feel comfortable with this, right? I feel comfortable. Okay, good. So, right, it's good. Good. Okay, good. So now, if I did this Avera, I ate this chilev, and I'm in a doubtful situation, right? And then I become aware that I ate a doubtful one, and then I do it again, right? So for sure, Rebbe says that I bring one korban asham toli. Says Reish Lakish, you know what also Rebbe means to say? Rebbe also means to say that if you found out afterwards that you actually ate non-kosher meat, that awareness of the doubt in between is enough to make you bring two korban chatos as well. That awareness of suffix, that awareness of doubt, you're bringing two sin offerings, right? That's two sin offerings. Now, generally speaking, in order to bring us two sin offerings, if you do, we call this helim achas, one forgetfulness. If I do the same avera twice, I get up in the morning, I forgot it's Shabbos, and I make scrambled eggs for breakfast, and then I realize, what would be nice? I'm going to make scrambled eggs for my wife also, and I make more scrambled eggs. I've done the same avera twice. I bring one sacrifice because I just forgot one time that it was Shabbos, okay? In order for me to be liable for two sacrifices, I have to make myself scrambled eggs, sit down, open my newspaper, and go, oh no, Saturday. I can't do this, it's Shabbos. And then I put my newspaper down, use the washroom, come back, and I go, I made scrambled eggs for myself. I should make for my wife also. And then do it again, right? Then I bring two korban chatos because I remembered in between.
You consciously did the second avera?
Not intentionally. Again, you had to forget it was Shabbos again.
So you made eggs, realized, forgot, and
again,
then made eggs for your wife.
That's correct. Now I'm chayav two sacrifices. Says Rabbi, being aware in between doesn't mean that you had to be aware for sure that you did the avera. Being aware of the doubtful avera was sufficient. Because in the end, since you became aware of the fact that you actually did the avera, it's going to hold you liable for two averos.
Why did we bring Yashim when we walked over a Suffolk grave? Why did we say we're chayav?
Because there's no avera in walking over a grave, unless you're a Nazir or a Kohen.
No, but you entered into the base of Mikdash.
Then we would bring korban ol v'yored. But the problem with the korban ol v'yored is because remember we had to have awareness beforehand in order to bring the korban ol v'yored. It's special.
No, but like if you went down one of the two paths and you went into the base of Mikdash, would you bring the korban ashim? If there were two paths.
No, because we don't bring a korban ashim totally except for a korban chatos circumstance, right? This is a korban ol v'yored. All the rules are different with the korban ol v'yored, right? Yeah. So now what Reish Lakish is telling me here is the opposite of what Reish Lakish is telling me over there, right? He's telling me, Reish Lakish is saying that that a doubtful awareness is considered 100% awareness. Whereas Reish Lakish before, when it came to the paths, told me doubtful awareness is not considered to be awareness. That's why he had to say the only reason why somebody who had doubtful awareness isn't liable, he would be liable. The person who holds that you're not liable, that you're going to be liable for a sacrifice is Rabbi Yishmael. That's why he had to go with Rabbi Yishmael's opinion before. So now we have a contradiction between Reish Lakish. Is Reish Lakish hold this doubtful awareness is enough of an awareness or not?
He's contradicting himself.
Yes, he is. There you go. So that's question number one on Reish Lakish. For Rabbi Yochanan Amar, now we're going to go into Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Kashem Shigedios Vadai Be'alma Mischalkos Lechatos, Kach Yedios Safik Mischalkos La'ashamos. Rabbi Yochanan says, it's not true what you're saying, Reish Lakish. The only reason why according to Rebbe, he says that you're going to bring two asham tolois is because an asham toloi is brought for a doubtful avera. So therefore, if you have a suffix, when you become aware of the suffix, that's why you need a second asham toloi. But in order to bring a second chatos, you need to have definite knowledge because chatos is brought for a definite awareness of the avera you did. Therefore, you need definite awareness to separate between the chatos. You're jumping to a separate conclusion, is what he's telling Reish Lakish. Now, Bishlama Rabbi Yochanan lo kasha. Rabbi Yochanan's contradiction isn't so bad because kan asu velo b'chol Torah kula asu. This rule, this circumstance where they made awareness of suffix, of doubtful awareness, to be significant, bottom line is that was something that they did by Tumah. That wasn't the way that it works in all other. Suffix awareness is not considered awareness in all other circumstances. We can understand, as we said, this Tumah where you have to know and forget and know again. It's different rules. Okay, so that's first of all. Hacha hu delok siva yedia behedya. So here, right? It doesn't say that he has to have awareness, clearly. It's mi v'ne'alam hu udeka'asi v'lo b'kol Torah kula asu. Oh hodu I love yedia malaisa ba'inon. He says that if you read the psukim, right, the source of the pasuk that tells me that you're not that you need to have some kind of awareness is v'ne'alam. It's hidden from him. And here you have a suffix yedi, you have an awareness that's considered sufficient enough awareness. Whereas by the rest of the Torah, the pasuk says, oh hodu I love. He has to have real awareness. Therefore, with real awareness, that separates. So Rabbi Yochanan is saying, you know why I changed my mind? Why I think that doubtful awareness is sufficient when it comes to when it comes to Tuma is because that's the rule by Tuma. When it comes to Chatos, doubtful awareness is not sufficient. That's not a contradiction. That's because it's different. The rules are different between the two types of cases. So fine, Rabbi Yochanan is not so bad. El Reish Lakish is a problem. Ademokim lo Rabbi Yishmael, nokma karebi. Why does he have to establish the Mishnah according to Rabbi Yishmael's point of view? If what he holds is correct, that doubtful awareness is considered an awareness, then let him establish the Mishnah according to Rabbi according to Rabbi. It's fine. So Hakamash Malon, to Rabbi Yishmael, lo boy yediyah batchila. So what he's coming to tell me is, he says, you're right, it could, but his point that he's trying to make is he's trying to show you that Rabbi Yishmael doesn't require awareness at the beginning. And that's a separate point that he just wants to be able to make sure that we're all aware of. Well, Pshita, that we already knew. We learned that back in the Mishnah already at the beginning. Pshita, delo boy, mi delo maestrile, kroi, venelam, demechayev alav mikdash. He says, look, he doesn't use it. If you remember that the whole source, the whole reason why Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva had this argument was they had a disagreement about how to use the word venelam. Back 2 weeks ago we had this argument about how to use the word venelam, and Rabbi Akiva says venelam means that you have to have a double awareness, and Rabbi Yishmael wanted to use the pasuk in order to tell me that you're chayav malchus on the circumstances if you do it b'mezid, and Rabbi Akiva even though there was no action, so therefore we use the word venelam in different circumstances. So ma'odetema ki leisle mikroi aval migmara isle. What you would have thought was, okay, all we had taught was Rabbi Yishmael learned psukim different than Rabbi Akiva. We didn't know that maybe Rabbi Yishmael has halach l'moshe misinai. Maybe Rabbi Yishmael disagrees with Rabbi Akiva. And halach l'moshe misinai, you need to have awareness at the beginning. Kamash malon. So therefore, Reish Lakish is trying to make sure that we understand, and we point out that Rabbi Yishmael does not need this awareness at the beginning at all. Even once he says that there's no psukim to teach it, he learns that there's no need for this awareness at all, and he doesn't have a halacha Moshe Misinai that tells you do, and that's that. Hadronach Yediyas Hatuma, Hadronach Yediyas Tuma, Hadronach Yediyas Tuma. I know you're going to miss Tuma. We're going to have to move on to a new topic. Okay? Let's talk about oaths. Swearing. Not bad words.
Did you say oaths or oats?
I said oaths.
Okay, because I wouldn't be surprised.
My cousin Vinny,
from there to Syria.
Oaths. Okay. Here we go.
Oh, we're in a new chapter.
New chapter. Shevuos shtayim sheim arba. There are two types of oaths. Now I'm going to be self-conscious saying that every time. Which are four. Shvua she'ochel v'shelo ochel. Right. First of all, there are two. We call these future oaths about things that you're going to promise to do or promise not to do. I promise that I will eat this. I promise that I won't eat this. That's two. She'achalti v'shelo achalti. I could promise that I ate this or that I did not eat this. Right? That's four. Okay, past tense. Shvua shelo ochel ve'achal. What happens if he takes a oath that he will not eat and he ate? Kol shehu chayev. If he eats any amount of it, he is liable. Right? It's not a shear. There's no amount. Normally we have amounts. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. That's Amrulo, the rabbi said to Rabbi Akiva, Hey chamatzina be'ochel kol shehu shu chayev. We don't find such a concept anywhere else. You eat the slightest amount, you're liable. Normally, in order to eat non-kosher, you have to eat a kazayas. You have to eat a kibetzavs, different things. You need a certain volume size of the avera in order to be liable. Why is it that when it comes to an oath, you swear you will not eat something, you eat the drop of it and you're liable?
So you can eat one bacon bit?
One bacon bit and you're liable. If as long as you promised, I will not eat bacon bits.
No, like not in this, but like generally.
Then we call that
less than 160.
We would say it's usher, but but you're not chayav a punishment, right? That's we call it chatzi shir or smaller amounts, right? You're not liable for the punishment. You wouldn't have to bring a sacrifice. You're not going to get the punishment in based in, right? So he says, why is it that because you chayav shezeh chayav? So Amar lehem Rabbi Akiva answers them, as Rabbi Akiva normally does, he answers in a question, he says, this whole Aveira is different than anything else you've ever seen. Because where do we ever see a circumstance where somebody does an Aveira through speech and has to bring a sacrifice? Remember that speech is very different. When we've made this distinction in the past, when we've gone through Maseches Makos, speech, generally speaking, doesn't bring you lashes, and it wouldn't obligate you to a sacrifice. Speech is not an action. So says Rabbi Akiva, there's no action. So
there's the eating of the food. That's
okay. So, but the Aveira is the oath. So breaking of the oath. So therefore, he says, so what are we seeing here? We're seeing that the Aveira is by speech, and therefore the violation is of the minuscule amount. But it's a good question. Hang on, we'll get to there. Okay.
And if you say
Seriously,
bli-
this section.
if you say bli neder, does it get you off the hook?
Yes,
Because
absolutely. That is always say belinator. Yes, that's your path out of this.
Is this
To get
specifically about
jail
Nidarim
card.
or all of
Get
this?
a-
This is Shavuot versus Nidarim. We're going to explain. These are all
Shavui means like
a Shavua. We may as well mention it now because we're going to mention it in a few minutes. There's a difference between a Shavua and a Neder. The difference between a Shavua and a Neder. A Shavua is an oath, and a Neder is a promise. I don't know, whatever. Those are meaningless words in English. But an oath, a Shavua, we'll use the Hebrew terms because the Hebrew terms have distinct meanings. A Shavua is when I promise that I will do something. The promise is on me. A Neder is on the object. So therefore, if I promise that I will drink this cup of coffee, then a Shavua is on me. I have to drink the cup of coffee. I promise that this coffee is prohibited to me. The neder falls on the coffee, not on me.
And you also get if
Practically speaking, I can't drink it either way, right? If I promise not to do it, or I promise that that this becomes prohibited, but it makes a practical difference in certain circumstances.
So you get if I say I swear on this cup of coffee or something.
Right. So therefore, that's a difference between a shvua and a neder. A shvua. This is going to be great if you've ever done hataras nedarim and you get to the part of hataras nedarim, oh shvua, konam, iser, or this or that, and you're like, why do we have so many words for shvuos? This Gemara is for you. You will next year say your hataras nedarim with complete kavana, and your head will be spinning trying to remember. Oh, I know why they're saying all of these words. And after this Gemara. So
Shavua implies that you're because Shavui is like a prisoner, so it implies that you're chayav in like a very specific way. And what's the significance of that?
the significant. Well, you mean like what's the
Compared to like neder and stuff, right?
right? So the neder is on objects. Neder falls on the object, and the shvua falls on the person.
prohibition of an object.
Yes,
That would be a shuvah.
that's correct. Right?
I just don't want to say, like, the action is, the words are tied to the action. You said before, pure word, but this is not pure word. This is daver, it's speech, it's daver, and a maisa tied together. So it's not.
Yes, in some of the cases, and I think that we may as well highlight what Brian is saying for the sake of clarity, so he has it clear. So we should all. In other words, there are certain circumstances where I will take an oath, and the violation is an action. Like when I swear I won't eat something, so then I eat it. The violation is the act of eating that I'm doing. Then there's a real action, right? But then there are other circumstances where the violation is in inaction. I swear I will eat it, and I don't. So where's the violation? The violation is in my inaction, right?
When you became the dean for
So sometimes a shvua is a violation of action, and sometimes it's a violation of inaction. I could also have done something in the past, and I swore that I did not eat that ice cream. And I actually did eat the ice cream, right? Right? And I actually did eat the ice cream. The Avera is not eating the ice cream. The Avera is the oath I took because it's whatever came second. There was no problem eating the ice cream. It was permissible when I did it. The problem is the shvua that I took afterwards that says that I didn't do it.
So that's one of the reasons why you cannot be sworn into presidency?
There would be no reason why a Yid could not be sworn into presidency or swear in court either. It's just that we take the prohibition so seriously that we avoid it at all costs because we don't want to accidentally, you're going to see, you could be liable for accidentally lying.
You just say bli neder at the end, and no one will understand.
That's correct, right? Right? But that's why in the United States, I don't know if it's customary in Canada that it is permissible when you say, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth? They ask you can request for religious reasons to say, I affirm, right? I affirm rather than I promise,
affirm,
right?
yeah.
Right. Because I affirm.
So in this, what's the difference between lying in this case and swearing an oath that you didn't do something that you actually did?
Hang on, we're going to discuss all the different circumstances and cases, and lying, there's different ways of lying too. We're going to get very detailed into
Why
exactly
would
what
I ever
kind of
lie
lie.
to you?
We're going to find out. Okay, now, says the Gemara, Lememra, so let's take a look at this Mishnah. According to the way this Mishnah reads, De she'ochel de'achil namashma. When it says in the Mishnah, when you say, I'm going to take a shvua she'ochel, right? That means that what I'm saying is, I'm taking a shvua that I will eat, right? That's what it sounds like. But Uraminu, here's a contradiction. Shvua lo ochel lecha, shvua she'ochel lecha, Lo shavua shelo ochelecha aser. 3 types of oaths make you prohibited from eating something. If you say, for example, that lo ochelecha, I will not eat it. I will not eat your food. Second thing is, shavua she'ochelecha. I swear, this should be translated as I will eat, but it can't be that because this is a list of things that I'm not eating. So here we're going to translate it as, I am swearing about my eating from you. Do you hear that difference? If I swear about the eating that I'm eating from you, then I'm swearing that I'm not going to eat. So I'm translating she'ochel not as I swear that I will eat. I'm swearing about eating from you. And that means I won't eat.
But how you word it doesn't make sense.
It makes sense.
Yep, she'ochel, right? This is my, Rashi, be'isr shavua yehei alai, there should be a prohibition upon me, ma she'ochel mishalcha, that which I will eat from you. Okay, that's number 2. And then number 3 is the double negative approach. Lo shavua shelo ochel lecha. There will be no oath on that which I don't eat from you. Now, double negative is a positive, right? So therefore, you are saying by saying, you know what's not prohibited to me? The things that I won't eat from you. So that means the things that I do eat from you are prohibited. People could talk that way.
But would you be chayav for making the oath that you said you wouldn't make, or would you be chayav for doing the...
You're chayav for when you do the avera. Right, when you eat. If you eat, you're chayav, right? Okay, so in all of those circumstances, also, you're prohibited. All of those circumstances, the Mishnah is telling us that all of these are circumstances when that prohibit me from eating somebody's food. So now we have a contradiction in our Mishnah and this Mishnah that says that when I say she'ochel, it means I will eat, versus this other Mishnah says I won't eat. So which is it? So Rabbi says li'olam de'achil namashna. Really, when it says Shevuos she'ochel, it means I will eat. Lo kasha, and it's not a contradiction. Kan b'misarvin bo le'chol, kan b'she'ein misarvin bo le'chol. We're on Chaf Amud Aleph. It depends on what's going on around you at the time. And that's like a lot of things. The words that people use depend on the context. Context is like this. A bunch of people are going around and going, eat it, eat it, eat it. Then a guy says, I'm taking a shvuah from what I'm eating from you. Okay, under that circumstance, people understand they're telling him to eat it, and he's making an oath, he's not avoiding the eating it. So then that's why he's making the oath, and people understand that that's from the context what his statement is. But a plain statement, if a person wrote, I swear, she'ochel lecha, he's swearing that he will eat. Right? So therefore, you can understand, here is a possible way under a circumstance where it means something else.
How do you determine context then?
Observation. And we're going to determine, when it comes to Shevuos, this is going to be very important, right? Context and understanding about what a person means is very critical, right? It's not like a lot of other things in halacha where things are so black and white and clear. Shvuah, you're trying to get to the bottom of understanding what a regular person would mean when he says that thing.
If someone says a shvuah, but made it convoluted and actually meant the opposite, to which is he chayav?
So it's going to go by what he actually says.
Not what he meant.
Correct, because we're going to presume that we understand what he meant by what he says. Okay? Okay, so now, Masnisa, but our mission is b'she'ein misar from bolecho. There's nobody around telling you what to do, so therefore we just look at the plain words of the statement, and he's saying that he will eat. Brisa, the Brisa is b'misar from bolecho. The fortune is saying you should eat. The ka'amar lo achilna v'lo achilna. He says, I'm not eating. Dechi kamishtaveya hachi kamar. Then when he swears, he's saying this: Shevuos shelo ochel. I'm taking an oath not to eat it. Right? I'm not eating. I'm eating. Fine. I'm taking an oath about the food. Okay, that would be.
If he takes an oath about not eating it, is he allowed to eat it at the end?
Sorry, if he takes an oath not to, then he's not allowed to, right? That's what he's swearing to. Rav Ashi says, Tani Shavua She'i Ochel Lecha. He says, no, change the text. The text should read that I'm taking a shvuah that I will not eat echol, that I'm not eating. So if that's true, if you're just changing the text to make it more obvious, so then Ma'ila Meimer, what's the point? I mean, then there's no chiddush in that Mishnah to that point. So Mahu Detema, what would you have thought? Lishnei de iskila lei. Kamash Malan. So the answer is that I might have thought that he's stumbling over a speech, right? It's like he's stuttering, right? Then he didn't really. The answer is no. He meant that. That's what it sounds like, and that's what you were said. Like, what if he meant one thing but he stuttered and he said the other thing? The answer is we're going to go by what it sounds like he actually said, because he can't change his mind once he's done it. So you're going to go with what he actually said as the thing that he meant. Tana Rabbanan, our rabbis learn. Mivate Shavua. When you have the word mivta, the word mivta is the word literally translated as utterance. When you see that word, that means a shvuah. If somebody says the word mivta that I will eat, that means he's taking an oath. Isar, the word isar is a shvuah. So the word isar is also one second. Isar, where did I go? Mivta, there's isar shvuah. Isar.
It's one of the things we say when we do
Isar. So Isar is also a shvuah, and Isur of Isar. So, and what is the prohibition of the word Isar? The word, where does that come from? So the word Isar literally means to bind something up, right? Lesor means to tie something together, tie something up. So, im ata omer Isar shvuah chayev. So he says what happens is like this. If you hold that a connection of a tying together of something to a shvuah is liable, meaning I'm connecting one thing to another of a shvuah, then I'm liable. So then I'd be liable with the word isar as well. V'imlav, but if not, then I'd be pater. So, one second, that doesn't make any sense. Because first we said one thing and then we just said the other. First we said the word isar means a shvuah. Then we said it depends. If you hold, because we're basically saying that an isar means I'm connecting what I'm doing here to another oath. And so I'm saying that just like this is prohibited, so too, just like the thing that's already prohibited to me by an oath, this thing is tied to that and also is prohibited. So which is it? Is it a tying something to an oath or is it an oath itself? So first we're going to point out the contradiction. Imata omer isar shvuah v'ha'amart isar shvuahu. What do you mean? It depends on if you are, if the word isar connects you to a shvuah or not. You just said isar is an oath. So Abaye and Rav are going to have their two different ways of looking at this. Hachi kamar. This is the way he reads this brisa. Mivta shivua. The word mivta is an oath. Okay. So isar mitpis b'shvua. The word isar binds you to a shvua, which means that if you say something is isur, this loaf of bread is isar to me, so that is as though. And then he says another loaf of bread. This should be like it, right? It's like somebody saying this loaf of bread is prohibited to me. I should take an oath against this loaf of bread. And then I go to the second loaf and I say this one's just like the other one.
So it's adding on to the existing.
That's correct. I'm tying it together to the existing oath. That's what the word isar means. Isar means to tie something new to an existing oath that I have. So isar. So the question of what's the prohibition level of an isar in that case. So then, says Abaye, the Bryce explains. Depends on what you hold. If you hold that when you bind one oath to the other, when I say this is just as prohibited as that it's the same thing as actually making an oath itself on that object, then you'd be liable. The word isar follows that rule, and you'd be liable. V'im lav, but if you hold that it's not, that you're right, it's going to be prohibited to eat it, but you're not going to be liable the sacrifice or the lashes that you would get by violating your oath. So then the word isar is also not going to get you lashes or violation of oath, and you'd be pater. Okay, so that's Abaye's point. That's how Abaye learns it. Now, so he's basically mivta is an oath. Isar is a word that compares an item to something in which I took an oath, and whether I be liable or not depends on your perspective, right? So machlokas, subject to discussion.
Would tone also factor in? Like if you said something.
No, because yes, tone may also play a factor in your as well. That's not this Gemara, but that is also that is also true. Right?
If I'm talking to myself,
Yes.
and I say to myself, after this year, I'm going to go home and I'm going to have some pizza.
Blina.
No, but I don't say that.
Okay, good.
And I go home,
Right.
and I don't have the pizza. Did I commit an avera?
No, because remember, here we're using these specific words to activate the shvuah. If you say shvuah that I'm going to eat this pizza, if you say mivta that I'm going to eat this piece of pizza, if I'm going to say, just like I guaranteed that I was going to eat this piece of pizza, isar, this Coke that I'm going to also have, right? So then those are all binding, right? That would be where your prohibition is. You have to take a language of oath, right? If you just say, I'm going to do something, so that is not a binding oath.
Oh, really?
Is it a binding oath if you think it?
No.
No?
Well,
So you have to say it out loud to yourself.
You need to take, then it becomes a binding oath.
So you can say mivta in your mind and it doesn't count.
That's correct.
And you don't need Aiden for enough, right? Sure.
You need to aid him if you're going to get malchus for it. You do not need Adam to be chayav your oath. Yes, if you are by yourself and you take an oath, you're chayav to commit to that oath.
My last question for the next 2 minutes is, does this tractate, Shevuos,
Yes.
have anything to do with Shevuos?
It has everything to do with Shavuos, meaning oaths, but nothing to do with Shavuos, the holiday.
No.
Because
If I know it's disappointing.
it sounds the same.
Yes, exactly. That is because the word Shavuah also means a week, and a Shavuah means an oath. Right? So therefore,
If it had nikud, you could tell.
okay,
Pretty cool. This is going to coincide with Chag Shavuot, though.
that's correct.
Pretty neat.
That's why I asked the
Yeah.
question.
Dichsiv, how do we know that the word mivta means an oath, right? That's a unusual word. Where does it come from? And so we're going to learn that whenever we have the Torah using a word that means an oath, that word now has the designation of an oath word. Dichsiv, the pasuk says, "O nefesh ki shishava livate bisfasayim," a person who takes an oath of an utterance of the lips. So therefore, you see, it uses the word mivta in the pasuk. Isar nami dichsiv. Well, then isar also should be an oath. Why? Because the pasuk says, "Kol neder v'kol shvuas isar," any neder or any oath of an isar. Ella mimai de isar mitvas b'shvuahu. So he says, where do you know that an isar is not an oath itself, but rather merely binding an object to an existing oath? Dichsev, the pasuk says, "O asra isar al nafsha," or he binds the isar on himself, bishvua, to an oath. Right? So therefore, this pasuk means that. So if that's your explanation, al nafsha bishvua, mivta nami haksiv. When I look at the word mivta, also we have another pasuk that says, l'kol asher yivta ha'adam bishvua, anything that a person uses an utterance with a shavua. So therefore, you say mivta is also a connection to a shvua. El Rabbi, so Rabbi says no. Mivta shvua mehacha. The source of mivta being an oath itself comes from here. Vim hayo tiyeh leish unedareha aleha. When a person is going to, when it comes to a man and he makes his oath upon something, oh mivtas fase, or this is a woman, right? She makes an oath, right? If a woman is married to a man and she has a oath upon her, oh mivtas fase, or she makes an utterance of the lips, asher asra al nafsha, which she prohibits on herself. Ve'ilu shvua lo kamar, and there in that pasuk, it never uses the word shvua. So we see that the utterance of the lips, the mivta itself, is the shvua. So that's where we know that from. Now, even though we have other psukim that seem to indicate that you can understand mivta either way, this pasuk is conclusive.
What if you come home and your wife has an utterance to your lips? How would you know?
So we'll see when we get to the ladies, what we do. That's different masechta. But the bottom line is that when a husband finds out that his wife has taken an oath, if it is a substantial oath that can affect their marriage, he can annul it. Right? He can. He has
You can annul the marriage or the oath?
the oath.
Okay.
Thank you. Good point.
Both.
If you're required to say these words, these specific words to make an oath, then how is the swearing on the stand in English create?
Because we're going to see that there are any word that is in the Torah is a word that means oath. And then added on to those are words where it's clear that your intention is to take an oath as well. But we get into those kind of details as well. Now, but my asratzma, in that pasuk, how did she make something prohibited upon herself? Bimevate, when she uttered it. Okay, so that's how Abaye learns this Mishnah, how he explains what an mivate means, an oath, and isar means to connect something to an oath. Rava Amar, Rava says, Liolam imalach mitvas b'shvua lav kimotzi shvua mipiv dami. Rava says, there's no dispute about this. Everyone agrees that when you bind something to an existing oath, that's not the same as an oath itself. It's like a step removed, right? This is the thing that's prohibited. This is like that, which means this is prohibited, but it doesn't carry the same penalties as the object itself that was prohibited. Everybody agrees to that. So now, this is how you're going to explain this brisa. Mivta is a shvua. I keep saying mivate. Mivta is a shvua. Isar nami shvua. The word isar is also a shvua. And asareha de isar hitilu hakasav bein neder l'shvua. So the prohibition of an isar was placed in the pasuk between the concept of a neder and the concept of a shvua. Hotziu b'loshen neder and neder b'loshen shvua. So therefore, shvua. So he says the thing about an isar, which is unique, is that an isar could either be a shvua or a neder. depending on how the statement is phrased. If he speaks it out and says, this object is Isar on me, then it's a neder. If a person says, Isar that I will do something, then it's a shvua. That's what this Bryce is telling me. You know what's distinct about an Isar is that the Isar has this unique quality of being able to be a language that can be used either as a shvua or as a neder.
And this matters because the punishment for violating a neder and a shuvua
are going to be different. Yes, okay. That makes that difference. So heichani tilu, where do we put it? The im beis isha nidara o asra isar nafsha, right? By this woman, right? So she makes this oath, or she prohibits something on herself. Bishvua with a shvua. So there you see neder at the beginning of the pasuk, shvua at the end of the pasuk, with an isar in the middle. So that tells you the isar could go either way, goes this way or that way. Now the azdul tamayu. Each Abayi and Rav are both going according to their own reason. De itmar, as we said, matbis b'shvua, right? So if you are going to make a connection to a shvua, if you're going to take something and you're going to say this is connected to this, so Abayi says kimotzi shvua mipiv dami. He holds that connecting something to an existing oath is like the object itself is completely prohibited, just like the original oath. And he needs to be able to read the Brisa the way that he learns the Brisa in order to say that. Because according to Rava Amar, lav kimotzi shvua mipiv dami. Rava says, not so. There's no connection. So therefore, if there's no connection, this shvua, there's a connection, but it's not as prohibited. So then, he says that's the only option. There's no such thing as saying it's equally as connected. Okay, so meisvei. So let's ask the question: which way is it? Is the object, when an object is connected to something else, which is already a shvua, does it have the same force as a shvua itself? Ezu isar ha'omer b'Torah. So what is the circumstance where there's an isar in the Torah? Where's this that you're in violation of this isar of, and you're going to be in violation of the prohibition of violating your words, which is lo yachel dvaro. That's the lo saseh. Ha'omer, if a person says, harei alai shelo ochel basar, person says, I will not eat meat, veshelo eshte yayin, or I will not drink wine, keyom shemes bo aviv. And he makes it contingent. This is an isar. This is what makes an isar. He says, just like the day that my father died. Now, somebody might have...
It's like becoming a nazir by doing that.
Sounds sort of like it. What he's done is he's decided that he's going to take upon himself some kind of fasting for his father's yortzeit, or in order to commemorate the yortzeit, or the day of his father's death. He was in mourning and he decided he's not going to be happy. He's going to avoid meat and wine that day he's in mourning. Okay, or kiyom shemes bo ploni, or like the day so-and-so died. He wants to respect their yortzeit. Kiyom shenereg bo Gedalia ben Achikam, or for example, the day that Gedalia ben Achikam was killed. Gedalia ben Achikam was the governor, Nebuchadnezzar, after destroying the first base on Mikdash, left a Jewish governor in place in order to take care of the existing Jewish populace. And through politics and backstabbing, somewhat literally, Gedalia ben Achikam gets killed. And as a result, the rest of the Jewish people get punished and exiled, and it's a big, terrible event that causes us to have Tzom Gedalia, right? The Tzom Gedalia, which is the 3rd of Tishrei, is because of the death of Gedalia ben Achikam. So if somebody says, I'm not going to eat meat or drink wine, just like because of the day of Gedalia ben Achikam also. Kiyom Shira Yerushalayim b'churbanah, or like the day that I saw Yerushalayim in its destruction. So then also, then he's prohibited from taking part in the meat and wine. As we see that there's a connection, right? He's basically connecting he's making this isar, my oath is connected to these other days which I did not eat or drink wine. Eat meat or drink wine. For Amar Shmuel, now Shmuel says, Vehu shenodar uba me'oso hayom. He says, this works, Shmuel says, that he has to have taken an oath before that he wasn't eating during these days, right? There has to be an original oath. If he just says, it's connected to this day, but that's fine. Then in order for it to be an Isar, you needed to connect to something, right? So therefore, there has to be an oath that's existing that he connected this one to. So Bishlam ala Abaye, so I understand according to Abaye. Kidem matfis ben neder matfis bishvua shvua. So I understand according to Abaye. So this is what's going on in the Brisa. He says that since he holds that you can connect a shavua to another shavua, he holds you can similarly do, essentially this is a neder, what he's doing, because it's on the meat or on the wine. So then he is he can make such a connection. That's the point of this price, is he can make a connection from one item to the other thing. El Rava, right? So, what according to Rava, so he says you can't make a connection between item 1 to item 2. So then how can he make this connection between this meat and wine? How can he understand this brisa?
Why can the language Hari be strong enough to be considered?
Because then he continues. He says, just like.
Right, but so let's say he didn't drink those days. So then he can say it's
no, but he needs to connect it.
Shavuos.
1 second. What did he say? His statement was Basar shalosh yayin ki yom shemeis bo aviv. You can't.
Like the day I did.
Correct.
Meaning, like,
where's my prohibition coming from?
Right, but he's saying. But what I'm saying is he's just defining it. Like I didn't drink that day, or so too I'll drink this day.
Right, just like I won't. So therefore, that has to be.
Maybe it's not Isser. Maybe it's Shavuos.
But you're saying it's just like it. If there was no prohibition on that day, how can I be prohibited this day? If my day is being prohibited just because it's just like that one.
No, but he's not saying that. He's saying I
He
didn't
is.
do it
Kemes.
like that day. He's not saying I didn't do it because I was prohibited like that.
Okay, so then if you're right, if you're saying it that way, then he's not. Then there's no oath. Then you're proving the point. The Gemara's point is, if there was an oath, then it's an oath, and if there's not an oath, it's not an oath.
Congratulations, you just proved the Gemara right.
Right? That's what you said.
Take that, atheist.
Okay, so El Rav Akash. So Amar Lech Rav is going to explain Taretz ve'ema. So the way that you have to this is how you have to explain it. Ezu isar neder ha'omer b'Torah. When is there that there's an isar, which is a neder that's written in the Torah? Ha'omer harei alai shelo ochel basar v'shelo eshte yayim kiyom shemes bo aviv kiyom shenera bo ploni. So he says this is what he makes a statement. When is there this isar in the Torah by a neder? That is when somebody says, I'm not going to eat meat or drink wine, just like the day that my father passed away, or like the day that so-and-so passed away. The Amar Shmuel says, V'hu shenodor uba me'osu hayom, and he says that you have to already have an oath on that previous day in order to connect it to. My taima Amar Kra, so my taima, what is the reason for that? Why is it that he needs to have to make the connection? So Amar Kra, the pasuk says, Ish ki yidor neder la Hashem. So ad sheyidur bedavar hanidur. This is telling me that a neder in generally always, and this is what's a little bit weird about trying to learn Rashi, but Rashi seems to say that this means that always a neder means that you're connecting it to a previous neder. In order for a neder to ever take effect, there has to be, I'm saying, just like this is prohibited, so too this is prohibited. That's always the way that a neder works.
And that's the natural lashon.
That's correct.
So then this would qualify as a neder.
So that's what makes this Isser is a regular, and that's how Rav is learning this part. This is a regular neder. You know how a neder works? This is what you have to be able to say. Now, that is a little bit of a strange thing. For us to now say that a neder, if I say this is usher to me, I'm making a neder not to use this, is not a neder. So the Ramban says that can't be what Rashi is trying to say. Rashi can't be saying that. What Rashi must be saying is, if somebody chooses to use the language of connecting one thing to the other, then here's how it has to work. There's a method to that. Then this has to be prohibited, and then this thing can be connected to it in order to make it prohibited as well. If, however, you just want to make a neder straight and plain, that still works. So that's the Ramban is troubled by the idea that Rashi holds that all Nedarim have to be connected to something else that was previously Asr.
Does Ramban say it's disqualified because it does come up?
No, he says that it could be either way. It has to be either a neder in itself, or you can connect it. But you can't do connecting something to something else if that first thing is not Asr, right? If I say, just like I wasn't hungry yesterday and I didn't eat anything, so too I make a neder to not eat today. That's not a neder, because you connected it to something that wasn't a neder. That's not a neder. If you're going to connect, it has to be connected to something else previously.
You use the word neder. You use the word neder.
So you have to be something that was actually a neder.
Well, why can't it be? I don't understand why. Because it doesn't qualify as an